Love in the face of goodbye. The scent of roasted coffee beans hung heavy in the air of the daily grind. A small, independent coffee shop that had become the unofficial headquarters for a ragtag group of artists, writers, and dreamers. Among them were Clara, a painter with a penchant for vibrant colors, and an even more vibrant personality, and Ethan, a musician whose melodies could make even the most hardened hearts melt. For the past 2 years, Clara and Ethan had been inseparable. They spent countless hours discussing art, music, and life, their conversations flowing as effortlessly as the cafe's signature latte. They shared secrets, dreams, and the occasional stolen glance, a silent language that spoke volumes. Everyone around them could see it. The unspoken connection, the undeniable chemistry. Everyone, it seemed, except Clara and Ethan themselves. Clara had always been wary of love, her heart guarded by a fortress of self-doubt. She feared vulnerability, the possibility of being hurt, of losing herself in someone else. Ethan, on the other hand, was an open book, his emotions worn on his sleeve like a favorite melody. He had been drawn to Clara's strength, her independence, and the way her eyes sparkled when she talked about her art. He had known for months that he was falling in love with her, but he hesitated to confess his feelings, afraid of jeopardizing their friendship. He cherished their bond, the easy camaraderie, the unspoken understanding. He didn't want to risk losing that. Then came the news that shattered their carefully constructed world. Clara had received a scholarship to study art in Florence, Italy, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that would catapult her career to new heights. The catch, it was a permanent move. She would be leaving the country forever. The news hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He felt a wave of panic wash over him, followed by a profound sense of loss. He had always imagined a future with Clara, a future filled with laughter, music, and shared dreams. Now, that future was slipping away, dissolving like sugar in hot coffee. Clara, too, was struggling with the news. She was excited about the opportunity, eager to explore her artistic potential in a city steeped in history and culture. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she was leaving something important behind. She tried to ignore the pang of sadness that gnawed at her heart whenever she thought about Ethan. She told herself that they were just friends, that their connection was purely platonic, but deep down she knew that wasn't true. In the days leading up to her departure, Clara and Ethan spent as much time together as possible, clinging to their familiar routine, trying to ignore the elephant in the room. They drank coffee, listened to music, and wandered through art galleries, their conversations laced with unspoken goodbyes. Ethan noticed a change in Clara. She seemed more withdrawn, her vibrant energy dimmed by a veil of sadness. He wanted to reach out to her, to tell her how he felt, but the words caught in his throat, trapped by fear and uncertainty. The day before Clara's flight, they found themselves at their usual table in the daily grind, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Clara stared into her coffee cup, swirling the liquid around and around, avoiding Ethan's gaze. "So," Ethan said, breaking the silence, "tomorrow's the big day?" Clara nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yeah, you must be excited," he said, trying to sound enthusiastic, but his voice betrayed his sadness. "I am," Clara said, "but I'm also scared." Ethan reached across the table and took her hand, his touch sending a jolt of warmth through her. "It's okay to be scared," he said. "It's a big change." Clara looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm going to miss you, Ethan," she said, her voice trembling. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "I'm going to miss you too, Clara," he said, his voice equally choked with emotion. They sat in silence for a moment, their hands intertwined, their eyes locked. The unspoken words hung heavy in the air, a symphony of unrequited love and missed opportunities. As Clara prepared to leave, Ethan walked her to her apartment. They stood awkwardly at her doorstep, the weight of their impending separation pressing down on them. "Well," Clara said, breaking the silence, "this is it." Ethan nodded, his throat too tight to speak. Clara hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, hugging him tightly. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered, her voice muffled against his chest. "For everything." Ethan held her close, burying his face in her hair, inhaling her scent. "I'm going to miss you so much," he said, finally finding his voice. Clara pulled away, her eyes sparkling with tears. She reached up and gently brushed a stray strand of hair from his forehead. "Goodbye, Ethan," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of sadness and affection. And then she turned and walked into her apartment, leaving Ethan standing alone on the doorstep, his heart aching with unexpressed love. He stood there for a long time, replaying their last moments together, wondering if he had made a mistake. Should he have told her how he felt? Would it have changed anything? He knew that he couldn't let her leave without knowing the truth. He had to confess his feelings even if it was too late. He ran back to the daily grind, hoping to find her there, but the cafe was empty. The chairs stacked on the tables, the lights dimmed. Desperation gnawed at him. He had to find her. He had to tell her. He raced to her apartment, his heart pounding in his chest. He knocked on her door, his knuckles rapping against the wood. No answer. He tried the doorknob. It was unlocked. He stepped inside, his voice trembling. Clara. The apartment was empty, save for a few boxes and suitcases stacked by the door. A note lay on the kitchen counter. Ethan picked it up, his hands shaking. It was from Clara. "Ethan," the note read, "I'm at the airport. I couldn't leave without saying goodbye one last time. I know this is probably too late, but I had to tell you, I'm in love with you. I have been for a long time. I was just too scared to admit it. I understand if you don't feel the same way. I just needed you to know. Maybe, someday, our paths will cross again. Until then, goodbye, love. Clara." Ethan's heart soared. She felt the same way, but it was too late. She was already gone. He raced to the airport, weaving through the crowds, his eyes scanning every face. He had to find her. He reached the departure gate just as Clara was boarding the plane. "Clara," he shouted, his voice echoing through the terminal. Clara turned around, her eyes widening in surprise. Ethan ran towards her, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Clara, wait!" She stopped, her hand on the boarding pass, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Ethan reached her, his chest heaving. "I got your note," he said, his voice trembling. I love you too, Clara. I have for a long time." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Ethan," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan reached out and took her hand, his touch sending a jolt of electricity through them both. "Don't go," he said, his voice pleading. "Stay here with me. We can figure this out. We can make it work." Clara hesitated, her eyes darting between Ethan and the open door of the plane. Her dream was within reach, but so was something even more precious. The love of her life. After a moment of agonizing indecision, she made her choice. She tore up her boarding pass and threw it in the trash. "I'm staying," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "I'm staying with you," Ethan grinned, his heart overflowing with joy. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that had been building for months. The world faded away as they embraced. Their love finally out in the open, their future uncertain, but filled with hope. They had faced the ultimate goodbye and chosen love instead.